know what's going on tonight. Members of the board, pioneers of shred. We have some amazing panelists up here on this stage tonight. We have an Olympic bronze medalist. We have an X Games gold medalist. We have a woman who dared to shine in a male-dominated sport and eventually taught the president of the Aspen Skiing Company, Pat O'Donnell, to snowboard. We have a snowboard pioneer and an inventor of the high back binding. We have a video producer who did some of the first snowboard instructional videos. We have a man who turned a snowboard shop at the base of a ski-only mountain into the SSIA Retailer of the Year. That's an amazing feat. A world champion who dared to teach adults to snowboard, and the director of the 2003 Snowboard Club of the Year and inventor of the step-in snowboard binding. They'll all be out here in just a few minutes. But we thought we'd try and present something to get you in the mood. We have a really short clip that we think is a lot of fun, and as you watch it, when I come back up right afterwards, I want you to tell me what is missing, all right? So let's go ahead and roll that clip. This is by Glenn Lazaro, by the way.
A history of snowboarding in 2 minutes flat. December 25th, 1965. Sherman Poppins screws two skis together, attaches a rope to it, and his daughter Wendy surfs down a snow-covered hill. He called his invention a snurfer, a winter alternative to surfing. 1969. Inspired by sliding on cafeteria trays in college, Dmitry Milovich starts making snowboards with metal edges. 1972. Milovich starts a new company called Winter Stick. 1975. Articles about Winter Stick appear in Newsweek and Playboy. 1977. Tom Sims and Chuck Barfoot start producing snowboards in Sims' garage. Jake Burton moves to Vermont and starts making mutated versions of the snurfer. 1982. Suicide Six Resort in Vermont becomes the first resort in America to allow snowboarding. Tom Sims and Jake Burton compete in the last contest between snurfers and snowboarders. 1983. Jake Burton puts on the National Snowboard Championships at Snow Valley, Vermont. Snow Valley closes for good later that spring. That same year, Tom Sims holds the inaugural World Snowboarding Championships in Lake Tahoe. It is the first contest with a halfpipe event. It revolutionizes competition. 1985. Tom Sims doubles for James Bond in View to a Kill. Bond escapes across a glacial lake on a snowboard while skier thugs wipe out screaming and sinking into the icy waters. Both Sims and Burton introduced metal edges on their boards, making it easier to ride hardback and ice. The National Snowboarding Championships moved to Stratton Mountain, Vermont, and become the U.S. Open Snowboarding Championship. 1986. Stratton Mountain becomes the first resort to offer snowboarding instruction and snowboard rental. Of the approximately 600 ski resorts, only 39 allow snowboarding. Craig Kelly and Tom Burt are featured in a Wrigley's Gum commercial. That fall, Trans World Snowboarding magazine publishes its first issue, the first magazine devoted exclusively to snowboarding. Time magazine does a feature story on the growing sport, named snowboarding the worst new sport. 1990. Vail Ski Resort opens the first snowboard park in an attempt to segregate skiers and snowboarders. Snowboarders embrace the park. 1993. Over 50 different companies are producing snowboards. 1994. Ride Snowboards becomes the first snowboard company to go public. Shannon Dunn becomes the first woman snowboarder to get her own signature board. Sonic the Hedgehog snowboards for the first time, and Boozy the Clown makes his first appearance. 1997. ESPN highlights snowboarding in their first Winter X Games. 38,000 fans attend. Jake Burton appears in an American Express commercial. Snowboarding hits the big time. 1998. Snowboarding included in the Nagano Olympics. Terry A. Hawkinson, the top rider in the world, boycotts the event, claiming it goes against the soul of the sport. 92 million people watch as Ross Rabayati tests positive for marijuana.
He's qualified.
Gets his gold medal taken away from him. Sean Palmer appears on the cover of USA Today. They declare him the world's greatest athlete. Snowboarding pioneer Craig Kelly dies in an avalanche. Snowboarding loses one of its most loved mentors. That was a history of snowboarding in 2 minutes flat. All right. Okay. What was missing? Back there, what? Skiers are missing. Well, it's about snowboarding. What else is missing? Aspen is missing. What is up with that? You think that really this, one of the finest resorts in the world, had nothing to do with the sport of snowboarding? We're going to put that right with all these panelists we're going to bring out in just a moment. And I would like to introduce you to Chris Klug and Travis McLain.
Yeah. Hello. 2 minutes of snowboarding. Did anybody get a powder day the last couple days? Yeah.
How's everybody doing? Nice to see the snow flying again, huh? Just in time for X Games. Did that video conjure up any memories? Any familiar faces or thoughts? Can anyone identify sort of any of the experiences in there, whether you've been snowboarding here all your life or maybe not snowboarded a day? I know it did for me. Travis, what about you?
That was pretty awesome, just seeing how fast it went. But it happened, snowboarding was invented in the U.S. Tom Sims, Jake Burton, all those guys popping. But then Aspen was a big part of that as well. And we're going to kind of bring that into the picture here.
Tonight we've got the forefathers of snowboarding, the kings of shred, right here in Aspen.
I mean, Aspen was the epicenter of snowboarding at certain points in history, and now it's back there again, and these are the guys that made it, guys and gals that made it happen.
You know, I think for Travis and I, these, as he said, guys and gals, really paved the way for myself to be able to snowboard in the Olympics, to make a livelihood in the sport that I love, that I was so passionate about. I've been snowboarding now for almost 30 years, and I started back in the day with moon boots and a Burton backhill. And these guys are my heroes. I looked up to them, and they really paved the way for Travis to win a gold medal in the X Games, and for me to get to compete in 3 Olympics. So, well, the round of applause is for this panel we're going to bring out in a minute.
I mean, I started out with Sorels with my ski boot liners tucked in them, and yeah, these guys made it happen for all of us to be part of it. Klug won the Olympics, I think, 3rd place. Awesome.
Thanks, Jeff.
And these guys and girls were willing to do whatever it took to get up on the mountain. I mean, it wasn't easy. You couldn't just buy a lift ticket and go up on the mountain. These guys were out there doing anything they could to get up on the mountain, and right now we're gonna bring them out.
That was my favorite quote last night. I think Jeff Grell said that. He said, you know, we were willing to do whatever it took to ride the local mountains. And did anybody ride Aspen Mountain today, snowboard on Aspen Mountain today? I did. It was epic. Well, you know, Mike, you and I were out there shredding together, and we can thank guys like you and the rest of this panel for being able to do that, because it's come a long way in the last few decades. So let's introduce our panel. If anyone's ever made a hillside turn, if anyone's ever landed a big air over at Buttermilk at the X Games venue and had a little support on their hillside, we can thank the inventor of the high back. Let's bring out Jeff Grell. Yeah, Jeff. Jeff came all the way from California to join us tonight. We're stoked to have him.
This guy dug the first half pipe ever at Mount Hood, was the first downhill world champion, many world championships, many World Cup championships, and invented the step-in binding, Mr. Chris Karol.
How many of you are going to watch the X Games this weekend? Woo! I'm gonna. I love it. How exciting is it when we head down valley or to my house at the North 40, and you see the whole base area of Buttermilk lit up. I'm just fired up the last few nights checking it out with the lighting and everything. It's so exciting. But a real precursor, maybe the earliest of the versions of the X Games, was the Grand Prix held in 1987 at Aspen Highlands. Not only was he a sponsor of the Grand Prix, but also helped cover it for one of the first televised snowboarding events. Let's bring out Chris Tribble. Yeah, Chris.
Has anybody taken a snowboard lesson as an adult? First guy to get out there and kind of get adults involved in snowboard lessons, world champion Kevin Delaney.
Any Shred Betties out there? This was the original Shred Betty. She was the head coach for Delaney's adult snowboard camp. Please bring out Susan Saghatoselami. Did I say that? No. Saghatoselami.
Saghatoselami.
Yeah, Susan.
If you've ever bought a snowboard, had a snowboard tuned, or had anything to do with retail of a snowboard in the Aspen Valley, you've dealt with this guy, Mr. Larry Madden.
Yeah, Larry. Yeah, Larry. So what we're going to do now is Travis and I are going to do a little introduction for each of these, kind of tell their story. While we're doing this, think about a few questions, because we're going to introduce these guys with a little brief bio, and then they're going to tell their story for a few minutes. Travis and I will then pose a couple of questions to get the Q&A started, and then you guys, it's open season on whatever you guys want to ask them. So as we're introducing them and they're telling their stories, keep a few good questions in mind. We're going to try to go in chronological order here. We had a great meeting last night sort of discussing the chronology, and it was pretty interesting, but I think we got it somewhat sorted out, and correct us if we butcher a few dates or names here. But let's start out with Jeff Grell. In 1978, Jeff had a one-way ticket to Stapleton Airport, then a one-way bus ticket here to Aspen. I think he was chasing a girl, isn't that right, Jeff? Isn't that how we all ended up in Aspen? Or always ends up that way, chasing a lady. But he said in 1978 he was camping on the Rio Grande Trail in a tent. That was his accommodations in 1978. He came back in style in 83-84. For the 83-84 season, he drove his red Carmen Ghia back then. He was one of the first snowboarders at Aspen Highlands in 83-84. At Aspen Highlands, he developed the first ever high back binding for snowboards. I know back on my Burton Backhill and Burton Performer, I mean, the bindings are a joke. When you look at it today, there's no way you can carve a hillside turn. There was no support unless you were riding powder. So thanks to Jeff, as I said, we can all enjoy that sensation of making a hillside turn. While he was there, yeah, Jeff. While he was there, he was instrumental in starting one of the first snowboard competitions, as I said, the 1987 Snowboard Grand Prix, which is really a precursor to the Grand Prix circuit that still goes on today, the World Cup circuit, and ultimately what we see at the X Games. So, Jeff, I'm going to turn the mic over to you first. If you can talk to us a little bit about that first season in 83-84, what that was like, and developing the high back here, and ultimately getting involved on the competition side too.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It's a real pleasure to be here and, be invited by the Aspen Historical Society. I find it's been a real honor. But big thanks to all my colleagues and friends here and anybody in the audience that's come out. 83 was a special year because the Highlands let me ride the mountain. It gave me a chance to do things that had never really, gave me the opportunity to get a lot of runs in. Really what it did. It gave me a chance to experiment and try some new ideas. And the original concept of the high back was inevitable for the sport. And there are other pioneers that helped in their own ways to develop that concept. But what we did do is we actually named it. It was named high back here in Aspen. And that stuck.
Did that name have anything to do with Highlands or?
You could read it into it, but I don't.
Yeah.
I didn't.
I mean, it could have been land of that.
Anyway, that went on, and that allowed me to meet a lot of other riders like Chris and Kevin through competitions that were happening at the time, and gave me a chance to compete out in California at the Soda Springs event with my design, and that turned out well. And then we were able to pass that idea on to guys like Chris, and it just went. And people, they often wonder why I didn't capitalize on that concept. It was a young sport, and I don't think any of us really knew how big it was going to get.
How many other people were riding with you that season in 83-84 at Highlands?
Oh, it was just a handful of us, really. It was so new. My friend Doug Olson, who came out with me originally, was there.
Weren't you telling us a story last night about, in 1984 was when we had the accident in Highlands Bowl. And in 83, in fact, they were pretty strict about nobody going in there, at least snowboarders. And you were telling us a story about that last night. Can you share that?
Well, Doug and I were both pretty adventurous, and getting up at 3 in the morning to hike to the top of the bowl was no easy feat. But we actually did do that, and that was on snowboards. Actually, it was on a winter stick, and that would have been one of the first ascents on a snowboard, I think, up in that area. But wow, what it's turned into today is something else. I'm so impressed whenever I come to Aspen how the community has grown the mountains and turned it into such a playground. It's really fascinating.
It's pretty fun for me. We got to all go out and ride Aspen Mountain this morning, and I think that collectively there was probably about 240 years of snowboarding history out there riding. And it was just fun, as I said, for me to have a chance to ride with all these guys, and a lot of history has transpired, since you first arrived here in 1978, but then with your snowboard in 1983, a lot has changed.
Oh, it's changed tremendously. And, the neat thing for me with my whole Aspen experience is that I was able to be involved in a lot of pivotal type events, whether it was the Grand Prix in 87, or the OP Aspen Grand Prix in '88, even the ESPN Freeride in '97. They all had impacts on the community and on the perception of snowboarding. And I like to think they were all positive, because look where we are today. I had a great day. It was one of the best days of the season, I think.
Awesome.
And then moving on to 1984. Jeff Grell goes out to the World Championships, the second World Championships at Soda Springs out in California. Hooks up with Chris Karol, Andy Coughlin, Mark Heingartner, and they all head over to Highlands. He told them of what a great season he had there. He hiked this bowl. It was unbelievable. You guys got to come check it out. It's awesome. And on the drive over, they come up with this idea to start a snowboarding school at Aspen Highlands, and they present this. Chris Karol and Jeff present it to the Aspen Highlands Skiing Corporation. This was a formal document they present, and then Aspen Highlands Skiing Corporation at the time gave them this letter. Dear Mr. Chris Karol and Mr. Jeffrey Grell of Snow Surfing International, we regret denying your request for implementation of a snowboarding program at Aspen Highlands for the 1984-85 season. If your group or snowboard sports industry would obtain a $1 million bodily injury, property damage, and personal insurance policy with Aspen Highlands Skiing Corporation as a named insured, we would like to reevaluate our position. We appreciate your personal, professional approach to this. So these guys came out, they wanted to start the snowboarding program there. The mountain had been open to snowboarding the year before, and they actually stopped all snowboarding on Aspen Highlands that year. These guys came out from the World Championship to have a great season that Jeff Grell had there, and they were shut down, and I want Chris Karol to kind of tell us about how that went down.
Yeah, I came out that first year with Mark and Andy. It was 83, 84, and Jake Burton had given us his van and a gas card and told us to go meet him in Tahoe from Vermont. So off we went, and stopping at every ski area on the way, buy a ticket and get on the lift and see what happened. And we did that at Eldora. Well, the first thing, actually, we went to Boulder, and this is kind of an interesting story. Andy Coughlin had a friend who was a student at CU named Mike Kaplan. And,
Who?
Yeah. And as it turned out, Mike, I don't know if he had any aspirations of coming to Aspen at that time, but he was a student. We stopped, saw him, and then rode Eldora. They were, patrol met us at the top of the lift, which was pretty common back then. Said, "What are those things?" Rode down with us. Said, "Hey, those are cool. Let us ride." We did the same at Breckenridge. Rode there for a day, and then made our way up here to Highlands, where Jeff had said to come and ride. And we're all from Vermont, and this was a whole new world. It was pretty amazing. So with that discussion about doing the school here, the seed was planted, as far as, there's a future there for us to do something. Being a pro snowboarder back in '83 didn't have a whole lot of options, really. So that next summer, I was actually, at the time I came out here, I was the world snowboarding champion at the first World Championships, which, had like maybe, 60 people in it or something. And, at the time I was jazzed on it. Nobody else knew what it was. And, but I was like, that was what I wanted to do. So I'd also, just graduated high school, traveled, snowboarded in Norway already. I spent a summer working on a farm over there, snowboarding, and then Austria, snowboarded there. In the early 80s, nothing was going on over there with snowboarding. Or actually, that's not true. There was some stuff going on with the early Apocalypse surf guys. But moving on to Aspen, one other detour I took to Nicaragua, about I was trying to decide what to do. Aspen was pivotal, though, for that decision for me, because at that time, I come from a generation of, like, no nuke protests and Vietnam War rallies and stuff like that, and different generation. But, affecting some change was something that was meaningful to me, and yet I wanted to go snowboarding. I wasn't going to be a politician. So anyway, coming to Aspen, it was obvious that, all right, this place is rad. This is where, obviously I want to be. But there's an opportunity here also. The idea of doing a school presented a possibility to do something, make a living and be able to ride a lot. So the next year, I came back out here with like $70 and snowboard, ready to do. That was funny, actually. I got off the bus today after flying in from the airport, and I think the last time I stepped off that bus coming into town was back in '83. I've been here lots of times in between, but driven. And I got like 170 in my pocket now. So, anyway, got here, excited. We were gonna ride and start the school. Did a lot of hiking before the lifts even opened, and then we kind of had to don the uniform. We figured the best way to affect change, and this is why I bring Nicaragua up and all that stuff, was it was clear to me that being around a bunch of angry people trying to change the world wasn't really working. And snowboarding was all like fun, people just doing what we were passionate about, and that was really the #1 goal, and trying to figure out how to make it work. So as far as getting involved in the ski industry, it was clear that Aspen, if you're going to change things from the establishment side, do it from the inside, and what a better place to do it than Aspen as far as the ski industry goes. This is the premier ski resort. I'd grown up hearing about it all my life, aside from the fact that it was some of the best riding, or the best riding I'd ever had in my life. We went through the ski school uniforms. Smitty hired us, and it was a big change for me to do that. But we still had our eyes set on the snowboarding program. And when the word came back that they couldn't do the program because of insurance reasons, here we were in Aspen with jobs at least, but we couldn't snowboard unless we hiked. So. The first thing to do was to figure out, all right, well, call the insurance companies and see what's going on, rather than just get mad and go somewhere else. So that's what we did. Called, I think Smitty and Dick Merritt and Don Rayburn and the ski co-management also got involved and probably made some calls as well. And other people have been doing programs. Kevin, I think you were doing stuff at Ski Cooper back then. Not that early. Well, like Mike Trotman, I know, was trying to get something started in Alta. Other people were doing things. But I think it really made a difference when Aspen called. These guys showed up, the insurance companies, representative from Lloyd's of London, Kendall, and Pettit Mori, and met us in the cafeteria at the Aspen Highlands, I was pretty astounded that they showed up. And Jeff and I showed up, piled every board we had into the back of his Carmen Ghia. They're sticking out the windows and everything, and scrounged up some business suits somewhere, and went into this meeting and presented snowboarding to these guys. And shortly after that, we got permission from Skico to do the demo out there, Don Snow demo. And I think what had happened, actually, the insurance companies originally had not really given snowboarding much thought, and just to classify them as snowplay devices, like flying saucers and stuff like that. So what happened, I think, is they reclassified snowboards as directional devices, which is what they were calling skis. So that eliminated that concern, and at that point it was really just a management question if the mountain wanted to let them up or not. That opened the door, and Highlands actually was a year later, but Skico jumped right on it and started letting snowboarders up at Tyhack for an experimental phase that year. By that time, I'd already actually moved on to Tahoe because I wanted to snowboard and ride more lifts. I was getting tired of hiking.
So you guys were relegated at that year when you came out after being so fired up to ride Highlands. You were relegated to doing this demo at Tyhack only, right?
Yeah, well, there's plenty of hiking to be done and
but as
stuff
far
like
as
that.
lift
But
access,
as far as lift access, yeah, that was it. Berthoud was open. We went over there for some contests, and we could go here and there and ride.
But in Aspen, it was Tyhack for that winter.
Did a lot of skiing that year.
Yeah.
Got really good at it.
Awesome.
So at that point, I think both of us were a little frustrated with the whole thing, but also we just wanted to keep riding and move on. So I went to Tahoe, stayed at Bob Klein's house, and I think the next year Bob came out here and actually started the program at Buttermilk. Meanwhile, I went back to New Hampshire and started a program at Loon Mountain, which was one of the early snowboard schools with a rental shop, and got that going for a few years. And I've been back to Aspen here and there over the years, but then flash forward like 17 years, I think it was, 2001, I got a phone call from Mike Kaplan, And I was in Vail about ready to print up a brochure to do a snowboard program, and he was looking for a program director at AVSC. And Chris Klug had given him my name. So thanks, Chris.
Yeah, you bet, Chris. You bet.
Yeah, so I took the job and came out here, and it was great. Spent, what was it, 2002, or it was about 4 years, I think, here running the program, which was great. Good to be back here. And it was, ironically, it was the year that I came back was the year that Ajax opened to snowboarding. So that kind of completed the whole cycle for me.
Nice.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Moving on, Chris Tribble leased a small space in the upstairs of the base area lodge, the A-frame at the bottom of Highlands. He was a part of that original snowboard posse. He was the founder of the original Border Bar, which then became the Video Bar. Chris was, yeah, Chris. We got to bring the Video Bar back, I think. We need that. We're missing that A-frame down there at the bottom of Highlands. He was, as I said, original member of the snowboard posse at Highlands, was instrumental in creating the Grand Prix, but which was really interesting with his company. He sponsored the Grand Prix, teamed up with Jeff Grell, did one of the first instructional snowboard videos called, it was the Snowboarding a Visual Lesson in 1987. He and Jeff Grell did that together. And I love the story about you with the Grand Prix, running wires up and down the Grand Prix so you could actually cover it. And I think that was one of the first ever televised snowboarding events. And in fact was televised on Madison Square Garden Network. And we had Anthony Everett, famous commentator, helped bring the play-by-play there. So if you can talk about kind of being involved in that original snowboard posse, the formation of the Border Bar, the video bar, and then ultimately the 1987 original Grand Prix, it'd be great.
It was called Shred Quarters. And that's where everyone hung out. And, you know, VHS just came out in 1980. And I borrowed enough money for a camera and a deck and happened to be on a Highlands free day for locals. And was able to, Smitty gave me a job doing ski videos for the ski school and give me a free ticket. So.
Hey, Chris, my dad still has a VHS player. Could he borrow some of those?
I can transfer those for you. I have some.
He's yet to figure out the clock, though, on it.
So the key is it started out with VHS, and through time it went to 3/4, and that was a big backpack and that type of thing. But when I met Jeff, you know, he taught me how to snowboard, and I was aggressive filmmaker, and I was ready to film anything in sight, you know. And when he was going to throw this event, I just remember him saying, "Chris, you got to do the video." And that sponsor, that banner thing, was only because there was no money in this. That was my pay there, was having the banner next to the Snow City International banner at the finish line, because you get the most exposure, you know. So, but it was quite a feat at that time, because it was 3/4-inch decks. They were big, clunky things. We had to get enough camera crew. Jeff, how are we going to pay for this? Don't worry about it, Chris. Just you could do it, can't you? And at that time, you know, like Smitty was saying earlier, you know, that time when somebody tasked you to do something, you just kind of went and said, okay. And you just went on with it and didn't really think twice about where it was going and what it was going to come out like. But that's, you felt you had a purpose, you know. And those days were pretty incredible in the video world, because there wasn't that much going on here even. You know, there wasn't the ski video for tourists yet. That stuff was all starting to evolve still. And to be able to cable, I think we had 6 cameras on the course. Of course, it wasn't live or anything, but our idea was, and I had never done it before, so it was new to me too, but you know, the idea was to have 5 or 6 of me out there with my camera connected to a box that we can switch 1, 2, 3, 4. And we hired a guy from Band Productions out of New York, and he just came off of MTV. So we thought he knew a lot more than we did, was the thing. And so we let him switch the show. And we didn't know till the very end, but it was the worst disaster ever because he was going boom, boom, boom. He was, and, you know, it wasn't like this event, like, you know, going through the gates, and we were just totally blown away. We had spent all this money to pay all these guys, and we had nothing but stuff we had to, like, go back and edit, you know? And at that time, where we were going to edit, I didn't own all that equipment, and so I had a friend that was in the TV business, local TV, Grand Junction, KREX, and he used to work at night shifts. So I would go, Jeff and I would go at night when nobody was there and start editing this stuff together. And we spent all night, you know, it was like the secret mission to get it done because we said we did the Grand Prix. We got all these cameras. You saw it. And not to come up with something was very scary. To this day, I don't think we've ever really talked about it, or I've never really told anybody before. So it's kind of funny that I'm saying it for the first time with all these people. But that year it was pretty crazy, and it took a lot of self-motivation. And the video bar became a very staple of fun, new things, excitement. It blended the skiers and the boarders together, and it was really an incredible time at that time because there was nothing but time. And we actually were making some money too on the slopes. I was.
That's awesome.
So that was pretty amazing. That was my first job out of college. Created it, and would go home with some cash in my pocket going, wow, this is for real, you know?
Did Jeff know you were doing that?
That was outside of the Grand Prix, because the Grand Prix was definitely not a money-making situation.
Hey, speaking of money, Chris, what were the events, first of all, at the 1987 Grand Prix, and what was the prize money like for the athletes?
I think I'd have to refer that back to Jeff, because the prize money started out really high until we had to start paying all the cameramen. Because I didn't know where that money was coming from. But he said, just do it, Chris. Just get it done. Okay, got the crew together, got it done. And I saw an article that Jeff pointed out to me where the complaints of the snowboarders were that the prize money was really low. Well, it hit me last night. Now I know why, because we had to go pay everybody that we had commissioned to get this job done. And believe it or not, we have footage to prove it, and a lot of it. So it was money well spent, Jeff. Thanks.
Let's get that put together. We all want to see it.
And in that video bar at Highlands, I remember seeing pictures of some of the most influential snowboarders of all time. I mean, Craig Kelly was there, Sean Palmer, and that was the place to be. Highlands was the epicenter of snowboarding in the world in Colorado. It was awesome.
And I think that was it. It was documenting. We didn't know what we were documenting. We just knew, and these people went on, and you know, it's just part of history that was incredible to be able to capture, have in good form right now. And as time goes on, it just becomes something that's more and more valuable, not in a monetary sense, but in the sense of heritage and you know, passing the torch. So, and there was some big riders there, huge.
Yeah, I mean, those are Craig Kelly, one of the greatest in history, was at Highlands.
And from around
in those
the world.
videos. Yeah. It's awesome.
Chris, did you know, I mean, I know when I got involved in the sport, I was an avid skateboarder. We had a 12-foot quarter pipe in my front yard, and I saw the very first snowboard. I said, that's skateboarding on snow. I got to try it, and my skis are history from there. But I just knew the first time I got on, I said, this is so much fun. People are going to love this. This is going to explode. Was that the conversation at the video bar? Was that like, we're a part of something so special and it's just a matter of time before this blows up? Or were you just living day to day and enjoying it?
I think it was like, wow, man, this awesome day. But, you know, the underlying thing it was a little bit suppression up there. Thank God it was a bar. Because you know, there were times where it was kind of, it was a place like Cheers, and guys would talk about, you know, we're out there, these guys are out there building a halfpipe on powder bowl with shovels. Okay, and it was with shovels. I don't know what else can I say. And you're wondering, God, why doesn't anybody help us? Why doesn't anybody believe in this sport and what it can become? And Jeff outlines that in a lot of the articles that were put out by the Aspen Times. It's really a great little history book in itself of him defending the sport and telling people where it was going to go and that type of thing. And I was just there filming it. I was just there getting what I could when I could. And, one day I hope to put all that together and make something really extraordinary.
Right on. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. Next up, Susan, inspired by the 1987 Grand Prix. After 20 days of snowboarding, she had done photo shoots, competitions, and become an instructor, I believe. She was one of the first female instructor at Snowmass. She had to take the test on skis, and then was certified as an instructor, and then competed in every event in snowboarding throughout history, pretty much. And then she is also still an instructor today. And just tell us a little bit about coming to the Aspen Valley and becoming an instructor and where it went from there.
Well, I was already in the Aspen Valley, and I was actually inspired by the Grand Prix event. And I saw that. I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. So I took a lesson with Jim Souza at Highlands, day 1. I think day 3 I was at top of Highlands, and 10 days they closed. So Jeff Grell actually made my first snowboard with my design on it. And we hiked the pass for, days 11 through 18. On day 19 and 20, he talked me into going to this competition in A Basin, which I was like, okay, let's go. And that was history. And the next year, he said, I want you to try out at Snowmass. And I said, okay, but the key was we had to try out on skis. 14 of us, I was the only girl. There were 7 of us hired. Then we got to go through snowboard training. And I found out 2 years ago they hired 3 more people after Christmas, and those instructors got to try out on boards. So we were the only wave for the Aspen Ski Company that had to try out on skis. But it was a very exciting time. I think I fell in love with snowboarding the minute I had one on my feet. It was just so much passion and traveling to the competitions, excitement. And, back then they didn't allow us on Aspen Mountain, but some of us would hike up early in the mornings before the mountain opened. And we knew eventually it would get open. We went to meetings. I think I was the only female invited. It didn't get opened that first season when we had all those meetings, because the next year was the 50th anniversary of the Ski Co. They didn't want to ruffle feathers, but I knew it would be coming, And all of these guys up here have truly inspired me, just from day one. And I've had such an enjoyment of a great career in snowboarding. And I still have passion getting up early in the morning in the spring. I think going up and doing Independence Pass when avalanche conditions are okay. And it's been a great ride. So thank you guys for coming, and I really have had a great time.
I guess my question for you, Susan, why would you want snowboarding on Aspen Mountain? Isn't it a little steep?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we all pushed hard to get Aspen Mountain open to snowboarding. It was right because we can't go there, so we wanted to go there. It was our passion to be there.
Yeah, I grew up here, and I always thought Aspen Mountain, that's really steep and has a lot of moguls. I don't think I want to go there on a snowboard.
Yeah, but come on.
I'm only kidding.
No jumps.
Yeah. It was really scary when snowboarders and skiers mingled on Aspen Mountain. Wow.
Yeah, they were afraid
Susan,
of that.
We want to hear a couple more stories about being one of the only ladies in a male-dominated sport. Let's hear some dirt here.
I got a lot of hard times, but I'm one of the boys, so I hung tough. You had to back in the day. I remember a story out at Snowmass when they actually had runs that we weren't allowed on. And I think there was a buddy of ours named Jason Bad Boy Beavers. He might be in the crowd tonight.
Yeah!
Woo! And apparently he was up on one of these closed runs, but he didn't know it was closed, and he got pulled over. I think he got arrested by the sheriff. But the mountain manager at the time, Steve Sewell, asked him, well, didn't you read the sign? And apparently the sign was knocked down, and he said, well, I can't read. So that worked okay for him. We even had a fund for freeing Jason Beavers from jail fund, get out of jail free card. And then that summer, apparently he was working construction, and Steve Sewell was there. And Jason's reading the Daily News or something like that. And Steve said, hey, I thought you told me you couldn't read. He said, I got hooked on phonics. So I thought that was a great comeback. But over the years, we've had a lot of challenges, people not wanting us here or wanting us there. You got dirty looks back in the beginning, especially because you were on a snowboard. But it's been a great, great experience, and I wouldn't change any of it.
Right on, Susan. That's a good one.
Larry Madden got his first snowboard in 1984, came to Snowmass in 1988 on spring break, then moved here the following year. He was the snowboard guy at Sabatini's Sports. I don't know if you guys remember Sabatini's, but if you bought a snowboard in Aspen, pretty much the only place you could go was Sabatini's or Performance Ski, and then Sidewinders out in Snowmass. And Larry realized, being the snowboard guy at Sabatini's, that there was a need for a snowboard shop. There was Sidewinders out at Snowmass, so him and Chris Churchill opened a snowboard shop at the bottom of a mountain that didn't allow snowboarding. Pretty bold move. But they went on to become the SIA Retailer of the Year 3 years later.
Woo!
And 1994 ACRA Business of the Year. So tell us about that progression. I actually worked for Larry, and everything that I have, I own a snowboard shop, Radio in Aspen, and it all came from working for Larry and learning how he did his thing. So big inspiration to me.
Well, I was lucky enough to come out here on spring break when I was in college in 1988, and they had I brought my skis and snowboard with me. It was the first time I ever rode on a ski area, and I was in Snowmass. They had opened it up that spring for a trial period to see if they were gonna, allow it. They had already had to go into Buttermilk, but Snowmass was like the first area. So I went out there. I was here for 3 days. Went out there on the first day. It was a little 2 inches of powder. It was pretty fun. Not falling down too much. Could actually turn both ways and stop and everything. And went back the next day, got a little better, and the third day, and it was just like, from there, it was just, just a ton of fun, just really being a part of that, trying something new, being an avid skier at the time, just having 2 toys to play on the slopes with. I ended up going back to college, graduated, came back out here in August, and started working in the ski shop like Travis was talking about. Got hired because I could snowboard, and they were selling snowboards there, and I became the guy that deal with the rentals and the repairs and such. And it was a pretty fun start. Later on that year, into I guess the spring of '89, I got hired by Jeff out in Snowmass to teach as a part-time job out in Snowmass. So I kind of got a really good involvement in snowboarding as soon as I got here in Aspen, and it was just only a few people around that really knew how to fix them, how to work on them, how to ride them. So it just became I had this little following going, and kind of decided, I was out at Highlands the next year with a good buddy of mine, Chris Churchill at the time, who was skiing. He hadn't even snowboarded at the time, but we were talking about just, what can we do to stay in Aspen? How can we make this a real job and not just be here for the one season and have to go back east and get real jobs? So we came up with the idea, riding the chairlift, that, hey, we should try to open a snowboard shop. We'd seen this there's a shop out in Snowmass that was doing pretty good. There was a couple of ski shops in town that were dabbling with it, but nobody really went into it in a full service way. So we created this store called Alternative Edge, which at the time there was a lot of alternative music, alternative everything was kind of going on in the early 90s. And we just we put it, our ideas together, came up with a business plan, applied for a loan from the Small Business Administration through the government, got shot down there, went back to our family. We came out with about maybe 10% of what we needed to really buy inventory, buy store fixtures, deposit for the lease, the whole thing. But somehow we were able to pull it off, with a song and a prayer. We had tons of support from the local people who had moved out here right after college like us. There's a lot of ski bums living in Aspen at the time. that weren't even snowboarders, but they just thought the whole idea and the concept was pretty cool. So we had friends that were bringing us a half a gallon of paint and some nails, some leftover wood off construction sites, and really helped us get going. And from there, we opened up in 1990. We had all these people saying, like, you guys are crazy, you can't do it, you're at the bottom of Aspen Mountain, they'll never open it. Don't you know, can't you see what's going on across the street? Lots of people who've been around town for a while really kind of were trying to give us some insight, but were also, kind of giving us the thumbs down, like, don't waste your time, don't waste your money. But meanwhile, we had all the community support from the younger generations and different people from different members of the ski areas and the ski schools that we saw there was a movement going on, and so we went for it. From there, we bought 1 or 2 boards, we sold them, we bought a couple more. Same thing with our jackets, pants, the whole thing, and it just took off. We were lucky, we were in the right place at the right time. And everybody around town, whenever somebody needed something for snowboarding, they just sent them our way. So we got, I don't know, it probably took us a couple years. After 2 years, we moved to a new location. We went from 600 square feet to about 1,500 square feet, and at that point, everything was rolling. It was 92, 93 that season. All our manufacturers couldn't believe the numbers that we were doing out of our store because, we were at Aspen. Aspen was known for not snowboarding, but, we had in our back pocket Aspen Highlands, Snowmass, and Buttermilk to ride at, and everybody stayed and played in Aspen, so we were right there to help kind of service and kind of get it off the ground. We helped the instructors get their equipment. Just, anybody that was into it, we really gave it that full service that we had going, from our experience working in ski shops. We just tried to do the same thing that, snowboarding wasn't getting at the time.
I think it was 93. I had gone snowboarding. My parents weren't really that into it. And I had fallen and broken both of my legs, which they really weren't into. And
Travis breaking something?
Broke both my legs. I was in a wheelchair. It was on Christmas break. I didn't even miss a day of school. It was awful. But I rolled into town, and we went to the snowboard shop. I was like, Mom, I really like snowboard. Actually, no, I was better. I was walking at this point. I'd gotten better with the broken legs. I went to the snowboard shop. I was like, Mom, skiing and snowboarding are both dangerous. I was like, we'll go to this shop. These guys are going to tell you, like, so we go in, and my mom says, so is snowboarding or skiing more dangerous? And I mean, Larry kind of remembers this more than.
Yeah, it was pretty classic because here's Travis, who's, I don't know, what are you, like 10 years old? Like, just a little guy. And they really didn't even make boards for little guys then. So everybody's just riding on stuff that was bigger than what they made for him. And, his mom, Holly, asked us, what's safer, skiing or snowboarding? And I remember looking at my partner, and we kind of, like, looked back at her, and we were both, like, chimed right in. We're like, snowboarding is much safer. Both feet are attached. You can't twist your knees. Ankles aren't going to get hurt. And Travis is going, yeah, awesome. And from there, we became really good friends, and it was just a really good start to the sport.
That's awesome.
And then Larry actually played a major role. He was the alternative edge, was the voice, along with Susan and everybody that supported it, for opening snowboarding on Aspen Mountain. The stickers, they made stickers, free Ajax. And tell us a little bit about that, Larry.
Yeah, Larry, how'd that go over?
Yeah, that was an uphill challenge for sure. Yeah, the free Ajax stickers, the original ones, it was actually with my second shop, a shop called Pride. And I'd seen a couple of these stickers, bumper stickers on cars around town. It was just like a black sticker with, white writing, free Ajax. And I had noticed them for like a week or two. And then one morning I came into work and went to open the shop door, and right on the mat there was a stack of these stickers that somebody anonymously dropped off. And I still don't know exactly who they came from. I have a pretty good idea, but so we started passing these out, and then next week there was another stack of them, and they just started getting around town, and it just kind of created this, just another movement of people, supporting their opinions and doing what they wanted to do on Aspen, and say, we live here, we work here, we want to be able to go up on the mountain on our lunch break. We can, ride the mountain. We've already proven that. And at that point, it took off, and it got into these, on the Aspen Daily News picked it up. And then from there, it got into the Associated Press. And there was another guy named Matt Kreitman that started an organization called freethesnow.com, and that was basically for the 4 ski areas that didn't allow snowboarding. It was Mad River Glen in Vermont, Alta in Utah, Aspen Mountain, and Deer
Taos.
Valley, and Taos. Actually, there's 5 of them. And they, he started putting out these stickers, with free Ajax with freethesnow.com on it, and you could get on the website, which was pretty early. This was in 98, 99 at the time, so there wasn't a whole lot of media like that out there, and a lot of people got behind it. And Aspen, I think, was the first of those 5 to open, and then Taos came around, and we're still waiting on the other 3. But it got out there and got the word out nationally.
I think you can tell at this point kind of what a tight-knit community that this snowboarding world was, the snowboarding culture. Susan worked for Kevin Delaney as the head snowboard coach for Delaney snowboard camps. Kevin sent a lot of his clients to Larry's shop to buy snowboards. These were the meccas for snowboarding, the areas where, the guys and the shops and the people that were driving the sport. And it's so funny how the attitudes change. I know in the early 80s when I was snowboarding on my Burton Performer, if you'd see another boarder on the hill, you'd just gravitate to him and you'd just be like, oh my God, what are you riding? What kind of gear are you on? And, oh, let's go ride. Let me show you my favorite line. And I'd be in moon boots, or I'd have graduated to Sorels at that point. But it was such a tight-knit community, and you were so stoked to see somebody else out on the hill riding. You just wanted to share your favorite line with them. You wanted to, try to learn from him too, because all of our equipment sucked at that stage. And you can see what a tight-knit community that it was. But one of the big players in the early 90s was Kevin Delaney. He was 1993 world champion. He won the world championship in Ischgl, Austria. I can verify that he did win the world championship. I was actually there cheering him on. I was his teammate. And he had a huge influence in my life, really looked up to him. And as I said, not just all of these guys, but Kevin in particular really helped pave the way for myself, for Jason Smith, for Travis, for all of us on the competitive side. And very grateful for all of his contributions in the sport. But one of the things that was really neat about Kevin, after having won about 50 competitions worldwide, he had broken his leg in 1993, I think just after the World Championships, and a long standing fracture that wasn't healing. And he decided he wanted to teach adults how to snowboard. And pretty much his camps were like, no kids. I want to teach adults. And I want to go to the premier resort, the most recognized resort, and I want to teach CEOs. I want to teach Hollywood celebs. I want to teach adults how to snowboard. He came up with the quick stick and taught adults. And to this day, I've had a snowboard camp for years. I still talk to people and adults that are like, oh yeah, I took the Delaney camp back in the 90s. It was awesome. Taught me how to snowboard. And they're still, enjoying the sport that we love. So talk a little bit about that, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Chris. And again, thanks for coming and supporting snowboarding, Aaron. It's, the years as we continue on this path of growth and come out of our infancy and move into the professional global level that we're at today. And that's, the theme that I see here, that I'm sitting here with some really big thinkers. And that is a great leap for someone to take in their own life and say that they see 4 steps ahead and they're going to go after it. And that's, I'm really honored to be up here with this crowd right here for sure. And a few things that I've heard in this talk so far is that the money didn't really ever come up for these people. It was the passion, that it was sharing the fun they were having on board, on the snowboard, and just being on the mountain and all that stuff. And sharing that fun is what binds us all and made us make decisions in our life and change, turn corners and stuff like that. But, really the influence that, I've been involved in snowboarding since 1980 and started to compete in the 84 season when Breckenridge opened, which was owned by the Aspen Skiing Company at the time, which is something that Chris Karol was mentioning. When they weren't allowed to continue on at Tyhack, the ski company then opened Breckenridge. And so that became the resort that many snowboarders went to actually ride lifts, because we didn't have metal edges then. There was very few boards with metal edges, and we were trying to ride lifts and groom trails with fins. And this was a technological disadvantage, I'll tell you that. A snowpack day. And, so we would take some washers and raise our fins up a certain height, excuse me, so that it wouldn't dig in as much, because the fins would just point the board downhill and take off, straight on down. And so, there was a lot of learning that just being able to ride at resorts is what we all wanted. That's why we're doing all this moving. And so for all these people's timelines and growing up in their different places and competing around the world and watching the industry both be, not accepted. I mean, I've had ski patrols yelling at me, get off the mountain from the lift. And, I was a good skier. I did some freestyle competition and stuff, and I'd just be like, come on down, come on down. Let's go toe to toe. And I can go with you on skis or I can go with you on snowboard. It's not about me snowboarding. Like, I love to do this, but I can ski too. So once you get that, you'll then see it's not that I can't ski. And we all had a fight. And it was a sad look at, society in a way that was very non-accepting. And yes, it was rudimentary technology and we couldn't make graceful turns, but we could do it and we could make some turns, and the technology did advance, and the best riders in the crew, many of them right up here, could make great turns through moguls in 1984 and stop and start no problem. So, boy, there were some serious moments where the passion that we had, we had to let a lot of stuff shrug off and just say this. We're still clearly focused on the goal, and we became a community really fast. And that was one of the greatest things to be a part of, as you all know, as you are a part of a great one. As the sport grew, it also had a pretty ugly side. Many, many people that took to snowboarding had never visited the ski resort before, or they somehow felt that the ticket gave them a license to do what they did on their skateboards back on the pavement at home. And so there was a side of snowboarding that I called snow skating, and it was just skateboarding on snow, and they wanted to rail slide and jump anything. I mean, a fully pressurized snowmaking hose, these guys with their metal edges would just get on there and ride it. It's like, that will kill you, or jumping off blind knolls, or trying to ride handrails at the lodge. People are on the stairs. They want to go down that rail at the exact same time. And so it was wacky as far as we're being accepted, and at a certain time in the late 80s and early 90s, when we had other media hitting, worst sport on the slopes. Many ski resorts were considering banning snowboarding because it was just becoming too much of a hassle. And it was unruly. It was sort of a gang pack mentality. A lot of youth in large groups would be out doing whatever they wanted, and telling the ski patrol to get out of their business. And it was pretty amazing to be a spokesperson for the sport and have all this positive momentum starting to crumble and starting to us become secular and being like, it's us and them, and even though we're all still snowboarders, which was our community to get the momentum to start. So one of my job was a professional athlete. I got paid to win events, and by sponsors, and that's how I made my living, and that's how Chris made his living, and that's how 1,000 athletes around the globe were trying to do it, and we needed sponsors. And my event was sponsored by Butterfinger candy bars. I'm like, hate this. This whole thing is kids. The next thing that's going to come on is video games and pop, Fruit Loops and, children's toys. And I just didn't see it working. I needed Audi. I needed Chevrolet. I wanted, Target. And I wanted to move into the future and be like, I want to be able to see a kid make a living at this, because I'm not going to be able to do that. I won the World Championships. I was 28. It was 1993. Pretty much retired by 95, and in 1993 I moved to Aspen. And the reason that I moved to Aspen because this is a crown jewel in the global winter sports crown, and I think you guys understand that. So what the credibility is, the credibility that this town offered was the influence almost immediately, and he mentioned it when the name Aspen came up in an insurance mind, that's where their families went. The CEOs of the largest insurance companies in the world went to Aspen for their ski vacation. So they were stoked on that. It rings, all right? It just rings. So I had done some adult snowboarding camps with my intention of changing the sport in a way that says, our motto was, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. And, in 6th grade, I wrote an essay that said, I'm going to get paid to play. And my teacher ripped it up, and I'm like, I'll show you, So, and so the reason that we came to Aspen is because we'd had great success. 40 campers at Ski Cooper, like 35 campers at Eldora. And it's like, I don't really want to take this on a traveling road show, this camp. The time is now to do this. I'm pretty much done. I've got the crown that I want, overall world champion. And can we go knock on the big door? Can we get this in a place that we can call home that has the influence that we need to really grow? And so with Peter King at Buttermilk and a few more of associates there at Buttermilk, they were really looking to put Buttermilk on the map in a way, because they knew who they were among the other mountains. They were the little guy, and it was the perfect teaching mountain with the high-speed quad, and the hotel at the base of the mountain was just perfect for us. And a little bit of negotiations and talking, and we brought in an independently run snowboard school system with our own teaching methodology. Those were all kind of groundbreaking stuff, underneath the Aspen umbrella, and put together the next 7 years of camps here, which became media sensations. We were doing live interviews with Matt Lauer and NBC Today. We're teaching Tony Robbins how to snowboard, Emerson Fittipaldi. We had a very, very elite clientele. The question was, can I land a G4 in Aspen? I'm like, yeah, don't worry, the runway's long enough for you. Okay, me and my 5 buddies will be there. And I'm like, that's the type of people we needed to get. One of my clients was a marketing person for Ralph Lauren. And they took the snowboarding camp, went home, and founded RLX, the adventure clothing line for Ralph Lauren. So the influence was working for what I wanted to have, an older, educated, affluent, and really CEO with big money in the right circles to fall in love with snowboarding, not be told about it. Because what happens when you fall in love with snowboarding is you have that childlike giggle inside you. And that is one thing that we all got. And that won't go away, I don't think, until, that's why we ride today. So, if you haven't tried it, it's there. Take a great lesson, it'll come there sooner, but these guys and these women were getting it, and they started to tell their friends and share it, and they'd come back with 9 people, and the word spread, and it went through the media. Like, you can learn, it's not just for kids, and that's exactly what we needed. And if you look around today, we have many, many non-endemic sponsors fronting and supporting the athletes and the sport and the growth of the culture in ways that were pretty hard to imagine at the 1987 Grand Prix, back on Aspen Highlands, when Chris Tribble's banner was the major sponsor, And the prize money was the fact that we got to hang out together and someone put some gates in the snow for us, and Aspen Highland let us. It has come so far to $1 million contracts by the athletes today, global events that are in prime time, top-rated entertainment spots in the media of all sources, live TV. It used to be really just football, hockey, basketball, the big 4 for U.S. sports, and it still is really. But on Sunday afternoon, there's the Dew Tour, there's the X Games, and the X Games is now home here. So my, goal of picking Aspen had a lot to do with how you built Aspen, okay? And that's something that, I'm honored to have had that time here with your community, and feel that, our sport has grown tremendously because of the association.
Right on. I just want to recognize 2 more people. I was always a fan of history in our town. I get the chance to announce the Ski World Cup when the ladies are here in the fall. And I love hearing those old stories of Bob Yaddy and Honoré Bonnet, the Frenchman that helped start the 5th Ski World Cup. And, one of the things that we talk about here is with the 1987 Highlands Grand Prix and the formation of the World Cup. One of the guys who was really instrumental in that is Ted Martin. He is one of the co-founders of the ISF, the International Snowboarding Federation, was then TD for pretty much every World Cup I ever competed in, as well as lots of other athletes. I think you were there in 2002 when the start gates caught on fire there at the 2002 Winter Olympics. and has really done a lot in really getting the sport of snowboarding in the Olympics and really raising the bar for competition. So thanks, Ted, for all that you've done.
And if you're going to do Ted, you got to do Christy too.
Yeah,
she
of
was
course.
at all
Christy
those events
was-
as well.
Absolutely, they're a team.
The other person is Mike Trotman right here. He was on that
Yeah,
first demo team at Tyhack, and then his uncle was lumberjack up in Lanedo. Oh yeah, and he was out there on Larkspur Mountain snowboarding back in the day with showing Hunter Thompson and those guys what snowboarding was all about. So honored to have him here as well.
Right on, Mike. Mike was tearing up Aspen Mountain today. He's still got it, so it's nice to see you out there, Mike. Travis and I are going to pose a couple questions, and then it's up to you guys. So hopefully you got some tough questions for these guys. I want to start out with the competition in 1997, and maybe Jeff. One of the cool things about Jeff is you were a competitor, you were an innovator, you were a race organizer along with Ted. But in 1997, you oversaw the Airwalk ESPN freeride event on Aspen Mountain. You saw the photos there in the opening slideshow of the halfpipe right on Little Nell, and they sort of had a hiatus and allowed snowboarders on Aspen Mountain there for a week. And I loved your story last night about 50 of the competitors getting eliminated from the competition because they just went wild when they got on Aspen Mountain. So maybe you can shed some light on that and sort of how that maybe have been a precursor to X Games and what we have today.
I was really lucky to have the career I did at Aspen, and there were a lot of neat things that happened along the way, but a couple people I really want to thank is Smitty, especially. And Dick Merritt, and all the people at the Highlands for everything they did, because what happened at the Highlands allowed me to continue not only the Grand Prix, the original one in '87, and then the one in the OP Aspen Grand Prix in '88, but that led me into a career beyond Aspen where I produced hundreds of events around the world and got to work with Ted Martin as well. But probably my crowning achievement in my mind was always, how am I ever going to get snowboarding on Aspen Mountain? And I'd hooked up with a company out of California that was interested in producing events with ESPN. And they said, Jeff, we understand you've had a lot of experience in this. Would you like to come get involved? Where should we go? I said, well, a California stop. We picked Sierra Tahoe, which was a great spot. East Coast stop, which was Killington. And hands down, Aspen Mountain. Contacted Aspen Mountain, talked to Colleen Russell, who at the time was running the marketing department, told her what we wanted to do, and we put together the deal, and in December 8th, 1987, we had a border cross, half-pipe, and a triple air built on Little Nell, courtesy of Aspen Ski Company. We produced a televised event on ESPN, and I really think that was a landmark event. Yeah, we had some issues with our riders getting a little carried away on the hill, but they were an energetic bunch, and the snow was good, and everybody likes a fresh track in the snow, and they did take advantage of that. But it made for a challenging event for me, because at the end of the day, going to an organizers meeting with the mountain and trying to explain that I really like those 50 athletes back in the contest. But it all worked out, and I think it made an impact. It allowed people to get on the mountain, and for what that did, it set a stage for what is happening today. And wow, what a difference a few years can make. But
snowboarders can be snowboarders. I think Ted can relate to that at the 1998 Winter Olympics in Nagano, Japan. The Japanese didn't want us going off-piste whatsoever. The woods are sacred there, and you're not allowed to ride powder. Meanwhile, there's meters of fresh powder on the sides of the race course, and nobody wanted to train. They just wanted to ride powder. And I think at one point at one of the racers meetings or one of the event meetings there, they said, listen, if anybody else rides any more powder on the sides of the slopes, they're kicked out of the Olympics. And that finally got our attention, but it was completely tracked up at that point anyway. But it sounds like pretty similar story because, powder is the Holy Grail.
I guess the high back being invented was actually at Aspen Highlands. And I mean, the patents and everything behind that, how did that come about? This one's to Jeff again.
Coming back to me, I'll get better at speaking if I keep trying.
Yeah.
In 83 and 84, when the Highlands opened up snowboarding, it was really the first opportunity that I'd ever had to get a lot of runs. And for all of you who know the Highlands, it's basically a ridge with trails going off both sides. For snowboarding, you're either goofy footer, regular footer. The traverses were just brutal on the original equipment. And I was always inventive of sorts, and I had the idea that, because I had skied up through that point, because that's what we had to do, because couldn't get on the hill to go snowboarding. I went to the thrift shop here in Aspen, bought some old boots, brought them back, modified them, hooked them onto my boots, and attached them, and worked it out with my boards, and it made a big difference. Like, had support. I named it the high back, different spelling than it is right now. I think I abbreviated to make it easier for everybody, all my snowboarder friends to understand. But
well, really, Jeff, some of the people in the crowd might not understand. Like the earliest snowboards just had a rope in the front, no bindings, and it was basically just a stick of wood, and down you went. There's one right there in the crowd. Right? Thank you for that. The next thing that happened was like an elastic band that was attached at 3 spots, and you just lifted it up and slid your feet in there. But you could lift your foot up like that, so it didn't really hold you. It didn't really hold you there. Soon after that, there's a really flimsy, like water ski looking binding that would have been on the back of a slalom ski, where you just jam your toe in there, and that gave you a little bit more control. They then put a little strap behind your heel to hold you into that position. But if you needed to go onto a heel side turn and set an edge, notice how there's no support here. And what would happen is your tibialis muscle would just be needing to lift that board up on edge, and these things would cramp to the point of being unable to walk, like after a weekend when you're riding on mountain for some of the first few times. So, I did a lot of telemark skiing. Jeff was a big skier as well, and the one thing that was happening at that time was the jet stick, taking a cuff of an alpine ski boot and putting it around your telemark boot. That was the first group that really adopted the jet stick, but even though it was probably more into pre-downhill skiing with the leather, there's something about that probably made the plastic shell around that iteration. And so Jeff's creation was the evolution of absolute pain into absolute pleasure.
Well said, Kevin. Let me ask one more question, and we'll turn it over to you guys. Maybe Susan, you can comment on this, and Chris, Karol. You guys competed in just about every discipline in snowboarding. I know, Susan, you competed for 17 years, and Karol, you even longer. Did you ever envision we'd see 22-foot pipes shaped with machines and, the events we're seeing in the Olympics today? And we're going to introduce in 2014 in Russia, slope style, men's, women's pipe, of course, has been since the beginning, and border cross and parallel GS. But did you guys ever think we'd see, multi-million-dollar freestylers and pipe riders and the disciplines and venues we're seeing today?
Well, I remember when we first got hired at Snowmass, and they had the big meeting, and Jeff was there, and there were 7 of us snowboarders and Jeff, and they didn't know where to put us. And they were kind of making fun of us, and I said, well, don't worry, snowboarding will be the revival to the ski industry. One day it'll be an Olympic sport. And everybody laughed at me, all these ski instructors. So I knew it would be an Olympic sport, but beyond my competition days. And I'm just so impressed with how these youngsters and the way the sport's evolved and the tricks they're doing these days and everything. It's come so far, and I just look forward to the future and seeing how far it can go in the future as well.
Yeah, Chris.
Right on, Susan. Thanks.
Yeah. I think you touched on it also, just that that stoke of knowing how awesome, what a cool feeling snowboarding was. Back then, it still is. But I definitely had that feeling when first time I got on a wide board on powder. It was just amazing. I remember walking down the street with a snowboarder, yellow Sims, no bindings, sky hooks, and realizing like nobody knew what this was, but like with no doubt in my mind, and I think you guys probably all have the same experience, you know, of realizing like this is so cool. There's no way it's not going to be huge. You know, it just people don't know about it yet. And I also remember my first trip to the buttermilk office. I think it was either the mountain manager's office to get a lift ticket, because that's where we used to have to go to get lift tickets, to explain what we were doing and all that. And anyway, just realizing, you know, walking up there and realizing like this is going to change completely. Like it was just a kind of an obvious thing for us, I think. But yeah, I definitely remember that feeling.
Right on. On that note, I'm going to throw my Ride Aspen Mountain hat on. April 1st, 2001, Ajax officially opened for good to snowboarding. So I'll rock my hat. Now it's your guys' turn to ask these guys some tough questions. Put them on the spot. Make them uncomfortable up here. I mean, let's ask some good questions. Andy, right here in front, you can start it out. We'll give you a mic.
Oh, thank you. In the past, there seemed to be some friction between the skiers and the snowboarders, but from my experience, that's calmed down in the last several years. Do you think there was a point where, you know, everyone just started getting along, or was there an event or anything that changed that allowed the skiers and the snowboarders to share their passion together?
I have a quick one for that, just a quick one. We were talking about that early today when we were up there snowboarding, and it seems that snowboarders in the beginning were really slow, and they weren't very good. So yes, skiers are going, get out of the way. But now, you know, they're as good, better, or, you know, and so you don't see that friction in that perspective and socially on the mountain anymore, because they're not just sitting there and being bad. They're actually very good.
I think it was when skiers adopted baggy pants. I mean, really, the influence that snowboarding has on the ski industry is really obvious and pretty well documented. But, you know, prior to that, we had no metal edges. So where did we look? We had no side cut. And we, you know, through the needs of us riding on a single board, we actually invented some super side cut and developed into the parabolic ski shape and also the fat skis, which transformed the day on the hill for almost every single person in this room if you're still skiing. One of those two pieces of equipment you have in your closet now. Fat skis or shape skis. And then the clothing really was influenced in a lot of ways, a little bit dirt baggy for snowboarders, but there was, you know, we have to go like this just to get into our bindings. So we really need to have a lot of movement capabilities in our clothing. And, you know, I did some designing for Obermeyer for a little while, and you know, we were building our stuff for the Delaney snowboard line, and we were just like, look, it's just ski clothing. Like, we're not really building snowboard clothing. We're building clothing to move and have freedom of movement that's still warm and cover the needs that I have on the mountain. And if I'm going to do, you know, a double daffy off the Highlands jump with a sled behind me because I'm a ski patroller and a super radster, you know, it's done. The tight pants and being uncomfortable is over, and just being comfortable in performance wear was just the marriage. Just like in the technology, same with the clothing, the soft goods, we joined forces. And I think everybody can see that we're just all sliding and leaving what I call smilage. Every turn you leave in the snow is just a nice smile shape, right?
Don't tell anyone, Kevin, but I think I learned how to snowboard in 1982, 83 in Spider stretch pants and a Rafi jacket. It was sweet.
Dude,
I'm really surprised that's changed. I mean, that was a good look.
Well, we didn't have clothing. We didn't have any options. So you had like one of the top brands in the industry.
Yeah, they were
to
sweet
keep you
stretch
warm
pants.
and, you know,
Larry, in the Ocean Pacific stretch pants.
wetsuit.
Larry, could you tell us a little bit about how you got the attention of the manufacturers as you were getting started?
I think the attention from the manufacturers came from the numbers out of the store. You know, they were salespeople. They wanted to sell the products they were making. And the fact that we were, you know, making the numbers happen for them in a place that they didn't really think, it wasn't like their #1 target, because they just assumed that, you couldn't really make it happen here. There's other places that seemed like it had a little bit more motion and more support. When Aspen really started, they started shipping stuff to the zip code, they were shipping more stuff, and then, just repeat business. We just got their attention, and they just realized that, just like Kevin was talking about, just the brand name of Aspen just carried a lot of weight. And when they saw that the potential that, snowboarding was happening here, and they saw how many people came here and how much, respect, and not so much respect, but just more, just getting their stuff on the slopes here, they really got it out there. It was like kind of free marketing, just bonus marketing for them to have it be seen here, because it was taken back from here to all different parts of the country and the world. So it was a really good place for them to have their products here.
Is the future a 44-foot half pipe, and where else is snowboarding going to go?
I'll tackle that. I think that's a great question. I run an alpine snowboard team, which is racing. We use hard boots, and I still ride soft boots and powder and all that, but it's funny because I get gurned by little freestyle rats all the time. Made fun of or whatever. But anyway, alpine snowboarding is a pretty unique little niche in the sport, and it doesn't get any media coverage, and there's not much sponsorship money available for it. But there's great athleticism in it, and it's for an educated audience who knows what they're looking at. It's pretty amazing to see what these athletes are doing. I think what's going on the freestyle side of things, I'm amazed to see what happens now. It's just like beyond what I think any of us could have imagined back in the day, maybe in our wildest dreams. But there's a point where I think the sport's going to go back into more like people noticing the finer aspects of it. Now it's like, how big can you go? How crazy, how death-defying can you get? And it's got consequences, as we all know. And I'd like to, 44-foot pipe might be safer, I don't know. But,
Now it's $2 million to build.
Yeah, but then there's also these other questions. Yeah, the resources we use for parks and things like that. But anyway, I think that's a great question, and I think it's one that nobody really has the answer to. I'd like to see it go, back into itself, for the sport and the riders to start to look at more the finer elements of technique, making round turns, things like that.
Travis,
nice big method errors,
Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought you were done there.
No, that's it. Thanks.
But McLain, you want to add to that too? You've certainly competed on the freestyle side predominantly, as well as on the border cross side, and had your fair share of injuries too. And where do you see it going as a coach and an athlete?
Well, I think it's come a long way. Good. They've created lower risk venues, lower risk. The 22-foot super pipe is much safer than a smaller pipe because there's longer transition, more place to fall. Where it will go, it's hard to say. You see the big air jump out at Buttermilk. That thing's probably 50 feet, a big step over. It's got a lot of kick. We're going to see tricks that have never been done at this X Games because of that venue that they've created. And next year will it be bigger, and will more tricks be done? Probably. At some point, though, I think, just that feeling, the powder turn that you get is almost just as good as doing a triple cork on a 70-foot jump. It's that love of the sport, no matter how you get it, whether it's hitting a big jump or a powder turn. And I see just from the industry, it going back, like Chris was saying, back to the love of it. Back to people wanting to make powder turns, and free riding becoming a bigger thing once again, where park and pipe and everything is built up. And I definitely think the Olympics needed snowboarding more than snowboarding needed the Olympics. And the X Games needed snowboarding more than snowboarding needed X Games. But it all coming back around to these guys hiking up the mountain to get their turns, and people doing it for the love of it more than someone like Shaun White, who, I think everybody here does snowboarding because they love snowboarding. I don't know if that guy does snowboarding because he loves snowboarding. I think he loves being a rock star, and that's why he does snowboarding.
Well, I think to answer that question, in my point of view, is that, and it has a lot to do with what Travis is saying there as well, is the fact that the bigger that you build the entity or the jump, the more that you could do a more technical barrage of tricks. So we've arrived at very big jumps already, but what the question is it more exciting to watch someone in a tight ball who's spinning 5 times on 2 different axes and then landing? And so it's just like a blender, spinning top, you know, bam, and they land, and they link that together. Or will we see like the need to like showcase a little bit more style of tricks from yesterday, or slow down that stuff and just, you know, just own that trick and land it in front of the judges, because not only are you doing it, but you added your own element of style. And if that becomes more popular, then we don't really need the bigger jumps to do that. So that's the question, I think.
But the blender trick is really cool if you slow it down in Mega Mo.
I think you all were skiers before you became snowboarders, or you were something. But what took you from whatever you were doing to snowboarding?
I'll answer that one first, and I'll just say I was an avid skateboarder at the time, and like I said, I saw snowboarding, I said, that's skateboarding on snow, I've got to try it, and I was instantly hooked, and that's all I wanted to do.
Same here.
I was a skier first and then became a snowboarder because I fell in love with it.
Skier first?
Yeah, I was a skier first, and you know, for me it was just that one floating turn of the snowboard, because it's a single unit, like a boat works on a glassy lake, except the lake happens to be tilted. And now you're just like, and you can draw that turn, one body, one board, one, you know, one mind, and the whole thing's just working together like surfing. And that's, for me, I was just like, right there. So it's magic.
Part of me was I had to stay on skis a lot because I had the video camera, and they didn't have GoPros then. You know? So, you know, you could not get around on a snowboard, and if you biffed with that stuff, that 50 pounds on your back, you're pretty much mush. Nobody would find you.
I bought a Snurfer in 1968, and that changed my life. But then I learned to ski, and I learned to telemark ski, and then I always snowboarded. So I wouldn't give up any one of my sports for one of the others, because they're all great.
Right.
I think that one for me was it wasn't the snowboarding. Like, skiing and snowboarding are very similar sports. They're both awesome. It's all being up on the mountain. But it was actually the culture of the snowboarding at the time when I was doing it was a lot different. Like, if you skied, to get out of school, you had to go ski racing. So, and I wanted to get out of school, so I ski raced. But everybody that ski raced, it was about winning. And I mean, I like winning. Everybody here likes winning. But when, like, I was pretty good for my age, so all the older kids would pick on me skiing, which wasn't fun for me. And then all the snowboarders, we all went out, and it was all about having fun, and they wanted you to learn a new trick or wanted you to get better. It was all of us as a group learning to do it and having fun. So it was less competitive, so I really enjoyed that. And people, like I said, loving to do it. Which now, I mean, skiing and the culture in the valley has changed quite a bit. It's not all about just racing. There's freestyle skiing and ski bums, and, you know, the mountain culture is kind of what sold it to me. And the mountain culture wasn't there in the ski racing at the time, but it was in the snowboarding.
I always say no matter what you're on, as long as you're having fun sliding down the hill, it's all good with me. We got time for just 2 more questions. If we got a couple more, let's go right down here in front.
I would like to know what happened to asymmetrical snowboards, why they evolved, and why they essentially passed out of favor. I know I have quite a few, and they're all goofy foot. I can hardly find a one anymore. And was curious technically if the shift in side cut made that much of a difference technically in railing or easy enough on the backside.
I think, the asymmetrical boards, it seemed like they came from, I believe they came from like a windsurfing background. I think they were making windsurfers asymmetrical. So it seemed like there's a lot of crossover, people from surfing, windsurfing, skiing at the time, but I think that's where the asymmetry came. So that kind of was like a new thing, and it was marketing, and it was, different snowboards were different than skis at the time, and it was a concept that was out there, and some people believed in really strongly at the time, so it was easy to sell. Snowboarding became more bi-directional. People started riding the boards both directions. It didn't really work as well, and it kind of, as the freestyle side of it became more popular, it kind of pushed that asymmetry out to more symmetrical style boards. That's from what I see.
Yeah, I mean, coming at it from a racing perspective, if you look at modern alpine race boards right now, they're all symmetric. And with slalom, it worked a little bit going heel to toe, diving forward, but at Super G, which we used to run Super G back in the ISF days, diving forward into a toe turn at 60 miles an hour was maybe not always the best way to go into it, But I think they were, other people thought differently. That was my personal opinion. But they faded. My feeling is, Larry, as a retailer, I would think it would have been a nightmare to stock different, regular, goofy. Oh, sorry, you're regular. We only have a goofy. And given the fact that the alpine market has gotten as small as it is, I think that combined with the extra hassle for retailers has probably had an effect on that as well.
From the retail side, at the beginning, it was almost good because it was easy to sell, because it was a new thing and it was out there and people wanted the new stuff. But then it was also stocking, having the right, the goofy foot versus the regular foot, and 3 different sizes became challenging as a retailer, but also for the manufacturers to make it and have it out there. So as the switch, as people became more popular to ride your board in both directions, I think along with, the retail side and the manufacturing side, it just made more sense to just make symmetrical boards.
Technically, there's no diff.
Well, now, the stances are a lot different now. So, depending upon how you like to stand on your board, maybe asymmetrical boards would work better for you. I know, Mike, you're making some asymmetrical boards, aren't you? Is that what I heard today? So, people have different theories on it. It's a very specific board when you're making it like that. But, if that's your style and that's how you like to stand on the board, it may work good for you. But if you like to stand a little bit more across and use your board in both directions, it's probably not the best tool.
LibTech and Burton both make snowboards that are asymmetrical that you can buy this next season and this season still. And they're milling the cores differently. Burton has a new concept, so check it out for sure. It's still around and it's awesome.
Well, that Hot Logical was groundbreaking in its day, though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That board was insane.
One thing we used to do in my shop, it was with the asymmetrical boards, if you didn't have an asymmetrical board, we came up with a tuning concept where we kind of made the edges a little bit sharper. You'd have more edge on your toe edge in the front and more heel edge on the back of the board. And that was something that kind of, was kind of...
F2B.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what Kevin used to ride on.
So Maddie in the middle here for our last question.
Jeff, what's with the briefcase?
Maddie wants to know what's in the briefcase. Is that the football?
Pandora's box. Tell the whole story. Come on.
Let's hear the story.
That's the original briefcase from
This
the
briefcase,
original Jeff Grell.
Chris and I actually, when we were lobbying with the Highlands to get on the program there, Chris and I dressed up in suits and both had a briefcase, and this was my briefcase. It got
All
used.
the stuff is still in it from that meeting.
I've still got my sandwich from 1984 in here. I've got all kinds of stuff in here. It's actually pretty cool. But yeah, but the whole thing in Aspen was great, and I got to give props to Smitty and the Aspen Highlands for letting me get a program started there, and they were really the first ones to open up and let us run a snowboard school in Aspen. And I was with them for 2 years. And it was some challenging times for both of us. You know, and that led me to opportunities with the ski company after that and beyond. And anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for supporting our sport in Aspen, and really enjoyed it.
I want to say thanks to my co-host, Travis McLain. I want to say thanks to Susan, Chris, Kevin, Chris Karol, Jeff Grell, Larry Madden for all that you guys have done to allow us to snowboard today, and everything you've done to contribute to the sport. It's awesome, and if you don't snowboard, or if you haven't been snowboarding enough, get out there and enjoy it. It's an amazing ride, and I'm just grateful to have been a part of it the last 30 years and looking forward to another 30 years.
Let's hear it for the members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. The Pioneers of Shred! Thank you so much for coming out tonight to the Wheeler Opera House. Once again, thanks to the staff here. We hope we see you next week for Aspen Valley Ski and Snowboard Club, 75 years of greatness. Get out there and keep making smiles, just like Kevin said. Have a great evening. Thanks for coming.
Good job, dude. Yeah, nice work. Thanks a lot. That was awesome. Good work.